It's match day, and while Arsenal may not yet have landed their dream striker, there's plenty of optimism around and plenty of news to discuss. This is today's Arsenal Transfer Show. Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk. Back again with you guys and girls for another episode of what is the Arsenal Transfer Show. Joining you every single morning at 8 a.m. UK time. Thank you as always for joining me and making this a part, as always, of your morning routines. Good morning to you. Good morning to those that are listening in the background this morning. I'm well aware that your other halves, your family members make you listen to me on your big TV screens every morning. So I'd just like to say hello to you. And thank you for letting them do so. But to the rest of you, good morning as well. And to those in the chat box, Peter, Tom, Runs with Cows, Arasilki, James, Matt G, Carlton, Maximius, Knowledge, Steve, Nick, Brian, Zoom, Bernard. We've got Devin and Paul and plenty more of you guys and girls in the chat box as well. Thank you for tuning in, wherever you happen to be, of course. And it is, as I mentioned, it is match day. Arsenal taking on Aston Villa in the Premier League. In fact, let's do a quick roundup of Premier League action that are taking place today. Arsenal is the late kickoff this afternoon. 5:30 p.m. They will host Unai Emery and Aston Villa. We'll do a little mini preview of that towards the end of, or the start of part two. But the early kickoff is Newcastle against Bournemouth, and then Arsenal's other title rivals are indeed in play. Arsenal will know the result of the Liverpool game before they kick off. They are playing away at Brentford. Leicester host Fulham, and West Ham, under their, of course, new management and looking in much better form, also hosting Crystal Palace as well. Sunday's games: Everton take on Spurs, Man United, Brighton, Forest, Southampton, Ipswich, Manchester City, and on Monday night is Chelsea against Wolves. Let's go into the transfer news, and Marmoush is indeed looking likely. In fact, it's pretty much there at this point to be signing for Manchester City. However, what we have learned is the more financial side of the deal, which has reached upwards of £70 million. The player, of course, has had a very good and strong first half of this season, building on from a very decent last season. Is costing Manchester City effectively the majority of what they sold Julian Alvarez for. Of course, Alvarez joined Atletico Madrid in the summer. He was sold for £80 million, where basically all of that fee has gone on Julian Alvarez. It's they brought in funds to spend on players. Well, they had 72 million on Marmoush. They spent a lot more money as well on other players during this window. Some defenders potentially coming in to the club, already having been signed even. But yes, it is. It's the reality that we find ourselves in with Man City, is that they like to spend money, and that's not stopped either. But Vitor Reis is, of course, one that's made that switch, and doesn't look like they're going to be stopping anytime soon as they try to recover their form for the second half of the season. And staying with Frankfurt as well, of course, where Marmoush is leaving, Ayden Heaven, Arsenal's young centre-half, was said to be at the game yesterday that Frankfurt were involved in as they tried to negotiate a deal for Arsenal's young, exciting defender. Arsenal have been trying to lock Ayden Heaven into a professional contract, but it has proven too difficult at this stage, with the potential for a pathway into first-team football proving very difficult indeed. That doesn't make too much of a surprise, really, when you consider that both Gabriel and Saliba play the majority of Arsenal's games at centre-half. It's very difficult for any young centre-half to come into this team and get regular game time with those two there. And, of course, their injuries, touch wood, have not been present to allow pathways for other young players in that type of position. And that's the balance that you have to kind of find, isn't it? It's the balance you have to find with players coming through the ranks. Can you give them enough minutes? Centre-half is, alongside probably centre-forward, is the two positions on the field which are the hardest to give young players minutes in, because they're such important ones and they're usually filled by such established players in the squads. But Ayden Heaven looks like, sadly, he's leaving. But if that is the case, Arsenal will hope to maybe have some kind of sell-on clause. Usually we have compensation with players that are of a certain age. We had that of Amari Hutchinson. The part of that compensation when he left for Chelsea was to have a sell-on clause in that deal, and Arsenal did get some money when he made that £20 million plus switch to Ipswich in the summer. And Arsenal, though, this story, German football is a big, heavy part of today's show because RB Leipzig's Benjamin Sesko continues to be linked with Arsenal, despite, of course, all of the things we discussed on yesterday's show. David Ornstein kind of said that there's so far no talks between RB Leipzig and Arsenal, despite the player's agent suggesting the difficulty that it would take. He didn't rule out the idea of a January move. But Jordan Davies of The Sun reported yesterday that Arsenal are said to be weighing up a £70 million move for Benjamin Sesko before the end of the transfer window. So this story is not going away. I've heard nothing myself to suggest that there is anything other than just interest. I told you, of course, yesterday that Arsenal's interest remains very, very strong, and they sincerely like the player, but the idea of doing a deal in January always seemed very unlikely. But more links, more stories continuing to perpetuate through lines today on Saturday. So if there's any change of this, there's any further updates, we'll be talking about them. You can be sure on Monday's show and into the week as the January transfer window reaches its second half. And we are well inside that second half now as time ticks down towards deadline day. But some perhaps more positive news on the transfer front is that there is said to be optimism growing around Sverre Halseth Nypan, the young Norwegian wonder kid that could cost as much as £10 million. There is a lot of optimism growing around this potential deal for Arsenal to sign the player. And it would be a really, really impressive deal for Arsenal to achieve, because it is indeed one of the most exciting young players in his position on the planet right now. And there's everybody raving who have, of course, been watching the player. Yes, plenty of reports. I mean, this from the Standard yesterday. Simon Collins, Arsenal are trying to sign Sverre Nypan. The 18-year-old has been touted as one of the brightest young prospects in Europe. And Arsenal are understood to be interested in a teenager. Reports in Norway claim that he could be allowed to leave for a fee of around £10 million. So that's from the Standard as well. And that follows on from other reports suggesting that Arsenal are confident of trying to sign the player, which is, of course, a very, very positive thing indeed, which is a really, really, really good and exciting potential move for the Gunners. I know it's not going to excite everybody because they want to get deals done. They want to see deals done now and they want to see deals done for the first team, but it's still an important thing to improve the depth of your side and improve your young options for the future. But he's 18, so look at Miles Lewis-Skelly right now getting minutes. It's not like he couldn't have a natural impact on the side already were he to sign. Mikel Arteta did take his press conference yesterday. I was in attendance for this, and he was in a good mood yesterday. I don't know if you've watched back some of the clips, the embargoed section in particular. He did get into a kind of a funny back and forth with John from The Sun. It was really kind of funny to watch, to get a lot of laughs in the room. I'll talk about that a little bit later on. But he was first asked about the news of Erling Haaland's 9.5-year contract. And he said, well, that's the news. If they're willing to commit with a player for that long, it's because they're really happy. So good news for them. On team news, he said about Calafiori that I still have a few decisions to make this afternoon with the medical staff to understand whether they are in the best condition for this game or the next one. So we will decide that. It said that a number of players, including Waneri, Calafiori, Ben White, are all closing on a potential return. Ben White is even potentially doing some work outside, as has Waneri. So there is some positivity there. Calafiori, we don't have too much information, though, on where his whereabouts is right now, how quickly he's expected to return. Nobody, though, so far in terms of Saka or Tomiyasu, though, not mentioned in the latest regarding team news. He was asked a question about Martin Zubimendi kind of indirectly. Sky Sports said, of course, we understand that you're interested in Martin Zubimendi, but they followed on the question with, is the midfield an area of the team that you would be looking to strengthen? So while not responding directly to suggestions of Martin Zubimendi and more so responding to the question of whether the midfield is part of that strengthening, Arteta said, we have certain situations with contracts expiring. We can renew those contracts like we have done in the past We are always actively evolving the squad and understanding what the players want to do when they finish our contracts together. And we have to be prepared. Now, David Ornstein has suggested that both Thomas Partey and Jorginho, no decision has yet been taken on either of those contract situations as of yet. There was reports from Brazil that Palmeiras, I think it was, Flamengo, that we're looking at Jorginho, but while there's said to be talks on the player side, there has been nothing on the club side of things as of yet. And Arsenal, I don't think would want to let him leave, especially not for free in January, which is the deal that Flamengo supposedly would want to do. I'd be surprised if Arsenal allow that to happen. Maybe if Nypan comes in, they see that as a replacement for Jorginho. But at the moment, that doesn't look close to happening anyway, or certainly there's not been any updates on that story up to this point. But yeah, he wasn't directly answered. Fabrizio Romano tagged me in a tweet yesterday because obviously I was doing the quotes, and it was said that the question was asked about Zubimendi, but more so the evolution of the midfield. And I think that quote maybe got a bit ran away with as a result. It's always important to listen, I think, to those press conferences and get the context surrounding those questions as well. With the answers, which sent my Twitter, of course, into absolute meltdown. But yes, there was also the appointment of Renee Slegers, the new head coach of the women's team. I actually was in the press conference for her first media chat with journalists after her appointment, and Arteta was asked about her appointment, and he said very happy. Obviously, she's done a phenomenal job since she's joined the role, and I'm very happy for her, very happy for the club as well, because promoting someone that was already with us, I think, is a very strong signal and a very good decision, I must say. So very happy for her. And when I went into that press conference with Renee Slegers, I actually asked her the question of what type of signal do you think it sends? Because Arteta, of course, had already said what he'd said. And he says, I see that we have a lot of confident people working here. We don't work daily close to the men's and the boys' teams. Well, we do with the boys' teams during international windows together with their coaching staff, and some of our girls will train with the boys. So there's been a real good cohesion, I think. But just if I look at what we have, the quality that we have in our staff, it's a very high level. Melissa Phillips comes from a head coach role as well. Kelly Smith is in the building. Seb Barton does really well with the goalkeepers, and we have Chris Bradley full-time on set pieces. So we have such great qualities. Maybe I would agree, therefore, with Mikel, was what I asked her during that press conference, because it was an interesting comment from Arteta about the signal that it sent to kind of the wider group about how strong promoting from within at the club is right now, and the result and the impact that is, of course, also having. Simon Collins from The Standard did ask kind of about the transfer situation and the idea of the idea of specifically kind of the want for signings now having changed to a need for signings. And he said, well, obviously we have more necessity now because of what happened in the last few weeks. That's obvious. And he was asked about how difficult it is to operate in the transfer market when everybody knows that you want a forward, which is a good question. And he said, I think it's more a question for Jason Ato. I don't know, but I think that we have to do what we think is right, and we can do as well. And that's it. It's clear that we would like to improve the squad, especially with what happened. Can we do it or not depends on other factors. And of course, those other factors are the reality of the situation. Are the players available? Can we kind of get those players that we want? Are they financially accessible? Are they good enough? I had a comment yesterday on the video. Let me find where the comment was about this idea that money talks in response to kind of the Brian Mbeumo suggestion that he's not for sale. Well, I replied saying players are genuinely not for sale. While money does talk, you can't just overpay for every single player just to get them. You would put yourself in a lot of trouble. And the response I got to that was that forget about quality. We don't have the numbers in attack. Either overpay in transfers or pay it with the season's goals being tarnished. And it's mad that some fans have got into a state of mind where now we're forgetting about quality. Some people are really genuinely worried so much they're willing to forego the idea of actually bringing in players that are good enough. That's nuts to me, and that strikes me as kind of desperation and shiny new toy syndrome more than anything. Arsenal cannot skimp on the quality of the players that they need to bring in. we absolutely need to make sure that we're bringing in players of the required standard. Otherwise, we're just bringing in bodies. We're wasting money, and they're not going to be good enough to do what we need them to do. And they're not an upgrade on what we already have in either starting or already depth positions in the squad. We cannot compromise on quality. Be incredibly naive to do that. Well, let's go to part 2 and the preview ahead of today's game against Aston Villa right after this. Okay, this is indeed part 2 of the show where we're going to be looking ahead to today's game against Aston Villa, looking to a very tricky test for Arsenal and one that is certainly going to bring back some tough memories for the side. Aston Villa are the team that effectively ended Arsenal's title hopes last season when they came to the Emirates and managed to get an unlikely victory. Arsenal had chances in the first half to win the game and sadly couldn't take them before towards the end of the match, the likes of Ollie Watkins really did put a hammer blow on Arsenal. I spoke to Ollie Watkins, I remember, after that game and the importance of what their Champions League chase was at that point too. And of course, that win basically gave them the push they needed to out-qualify Tottenham for the Champions League place at the end of last season. But now it is different. Aston Villa are sitting in 7th place this season, but they are only 2 points off 5th, which is likely to be a Champions League spot for the Premier League clubs this season. They're on the same number of points as Manchester City as well. And if they were to lose, they could risk falling behind the likes of Aston Villa and seeing the likes of Brighton and Fulham catch them up, while the gap then therefore potentially increases with Chelsea playing Wolves and Newcastle and Nottingham Forest all in action as well. Man City playing Ipswich, so you'd imagine there's going to be wins for those teams in at least some cases. So a lot of pressure for both teams. Arsenal can hope to continue closing the gap. Liverpool against Brentford away from home, a difficult game for them. If they drop points, we've got to try and take advantage of that. Looking at the team that I've gone for, Raya, Timber, Saliba, Gabriel, and Miles Lewis-Skelly. I know that there was some rumours yesterday flying about of William Saliba and a hamstring problem. That's not been confirmed at all, so I can't suggest or come into this feeling that he's not going to be available because there's been no confirmation about William Saliba's situation at this point in time. There was nothing to suggest that he would be missing the game in the press. There was nothing to suggest in the subsequent kind of, the areas that we've also seen talked about that he wouldn't be available. So, yeah, at the moment, no confirmation about William Saliba's situation. So I'm sorry that I can't provide any clarity on that. The club will never give out-and-out advice on whether a player's going to be available because they want to keep the opposition guessing. But hopefully Saliba is going to be okay. Miles Lewis-Skelly and Gabriel on the left-hand side. Partey, Rice, Ødegaard continue in midfield. Need to see a better performance this time, I think, from Partey after the few mistakes, of course, he made. But more of what we saw from him when he made that tackle that led to Arsenal's second goal. Rice, just more of the same. He was excellent against Tottenham in midweek. And Ødegaard looking far more back to the Ødegaard that we recognise from the previous seasons. Trossard have gone on the right, Martinelli on the left. I just feel as though Martinelli is better on the left than Trossard is worse on the right, if that makes sense. But it could be either side for those two. And then Kai Havertz, of course, our only centre-forward option really right now, besides Trossard as an alternative, unorthodox option if you were to rest Havertz and bring in Sterling. I really do hope that we can bring in that reinforcement because it is glaringly obvious how weak and lacking in depth we are in that forward line. We absolutely have to try and bring in some quality players during this window. Let's get some score predictions from you guys in the chat box. It's a very difficult game. I think both teams will score. I'm going to go 2-1 to the Arsenal in today's game with a goal from Havertz and a goal from Miles Lewis-Skelly to send the crowd into absolute raptures. It would be great to see. Let's see what you've got. Fergus going for a 2-1 win. Ranzo Cal's going 2-1. It's Mahev says 2-1. Jean goes 3-0. Maximius goes 2-1. Deepak 1-1. Stephen 1-1. Grantley Poo says 2-0 to the Arsenal. Z says 1-0 to the Arsenal. Tom says 1-1. Zoom says 3-1, sorry. Aditya 3-0. All goals from Havertz. Kazin's going for a 5-1 win. Amesy says 3-1 to us. Loga 2-0, Lars 2-0, Answer 2-0, Matt G 2-1, Barry 2-1. Lots of positivity in the chat this morning. Good to see. Temmy's still going with his reverse psychology of a Villa 5-0 win, Quartet and a Raya own goal. It's worked so far. I think he predicted a Spurs win the other day, and we saw how that turned out. So the reverse psychology, it's going well. Right, let's go to part 2 and your questions and more right after this. Okay, this is part 3 of the show where we're going to be going into the chat box and some of your questions that we need to try and answer. So if you've got any questions, use the capital Q before your question, and that is indeed what you need to do to try and get your questions to stand out. So get your capital Qs in. Asher says, worst feeling before the game? Only COVID, Brentford away, rival this. Tired, only 4 attackers, them with Ødegaard and Rice misfiring. Liverpool played before us, a night game. Villa has a squad that's got a full 90 minutes ahead of us. Emi Martinez. Ashley's really throwing in the narratives here going against Arsenal. It is a really tough game. It's without a doubt. All the factors are there. You've listed them very clearly and very well. We are lacking in depth. We've got injuries. We are an hour. We've got 24 hours less recovery than them. It's going to be tough. It's going to be a tough game, but my goodness me, what a potential boost it could be if we win this game. Nathan says, you seem like a reasonable guy, Tom. That's very kind of you. What would it take for you to target the owners? Regression, it would take for us to target. Because if Arsenal are going backwards as a club and as a result aren't spending what's required within their means, then absolutely that's when you start to point some fingers. So far, Arsenal have only gone in one direction, which is forwards, which has been very enjoyable over these last 5 seasons. And, since they took over in 2018, we've only gone in one direction. But if we regress, if we start making some ridiculous decisions, that's when you start to point those fingers. Mason says, random question, but what order do you make a cup of tea? Any particular way? There's only one way to make a cup of tea, Mason. Get your mug, typically a clear mug. I like a clear mug for a cup of tea. So you can kind of see I don't know what you call it, the infusion. Get your mug, your clear mug. You put your tea bag in. You put your hot boiling water in. You leave it to settle for a bit. Tea bag still in. You put the water. You then put the milk in, which tends to be just semi-skimmed for me. And then you kind of lift your tea bag up and you let it kind of settle a bit. And then you can kind of see how strong it is. If it's too strong, you can take the tea bag out, put a bit more milk in. If it's not strong enough, you've still got your tea bag in there, so you can let it infuse a bit more and get stronger. That's how you make a cup of tea, Mason. It's as simple as that. Ras says, I find it interesting. A lot of people complain that we don't find unearthed talent like Brighton and Dortmund do, but then complain if we buy players who they don't know of what they are. It's the classic hypocrisy of the Arsenal fan base, Raf. You know that as good as me. Temi says, can we crowdfund a loan for the club? I'm desperate. Lee says, what about moulding Ayden Heaven into the first team, enabling our centre-backs to have some rest periods? They are not machines, no, but it seems as though that his eyes are turning elsewhere, Lee, and it looks like he could be off to Frankfurt, it seems. GSM says, are we linked only with Sesko? 2 weeks to go, and why wait until the end of the window to panic buy? It's not about waiting at all. It's about discussions. It's about conversations, about waiting for opportunities that could crop up that aren't available right now. It's about potentially seeing how the market develops, the dominoes that need to fall in certain cases. People say Arsenal are slow, and I get it, but it don't look very slow when it comes to the Martin Zubimendi deal, and that's because when the players are there, Arsenal will show that proactiveness to try and make a move for them. But it takes time, and it takes the right timing and the right discussions. And also, you have to remember that there's a lot goes on behind the scenes that we are not privy to, and you have to accept that. You have to accept that you don't know, and even I and others that are perhaps more in the know and get little tidbits of information still don't know the vast majority of what's going on. And we have to, you have to take that as is. And so that's why when it comes to deadline day, things can pop up out of nowhere. And sometimes it takes a few days before deadline day. And sometimes it happens at the beginning of the window. It doesn't mean nothing is happening. Michael says, what are your thoughts about City's recent return to form? Do you think there is a threat? Of course there's a threat, Michael. It's City. You can never rule them out. Never, ever rule them out. But of course, they did just drop points once again in their most recent fixture. They got another away game today against Ipswich. If they drop points there, and Arsenal get another win. Arsenal are currently 8 points ahead of Manchester City, and they need to try and keep that gap as wide as feasibly possible. Mike says, if Arsenal could get Sesko, Sverre and Dibbling from Southampton, I'd be happy. What would you consider? Would you consider that an okay? It's mad that. Maybe that's not the intention behind your question, Mike, but potentially a £70 million striker, a very exciting young player in Nypan for like 10 million, and then Dibbling, who's going to cost you tens of millions because he's one of the most exciting young players in the Premier League right now. Would you consider that, quote, an okay window? That'd be an astonishingly good window for Arsenal if that happened. The mindset is mad to me that would be considered just an okay window. That'd be brilliant if Arsenal did those deals. But Mason says, yeah, Teabag has to come out before the milk. No, I'm sorry. This is where I divide, because you need to make sure you've got enough strength or not, or if you've not got enough, you keep your Teabag in. So you let the Teabag infuse in the water, milk goes in, and then, of course, you can check your strength with the Teabag, and you can change the strength if indeed you want it stronger or less so. But anyone who puts the Teabag and then the milk in before any water, you are crazy. You are mental. There is no justification for that when it comes to making tea. Chris says, we need a multi-club model. We probably could create a better pathway for youngsters, as we would have a club or two with our playing style. We could loan youngsters too as well. It's something that Arteta seems certainly very open to the idea of. Raf is looking at the Marmoush deals. Why don't City get accused of panic buying? Because those numbers look crazy. It's a huge deal for Marmoush. £72 million is massive for a player who's only really had 1.5 good seasons. Game Shot says January is the hardest window, yet this season seems like a lot of high quality players are moving or are on the move. Why does a sudden change, you believe? I mean, you look at the players that are on the move, but look at the fees that are involved as well. There wasn't a lot of spending in the summer from big clubs like Man City or Liverpool. So there's that to also factor in as well. So, yeah, you have to consider the lack of kind of options that are available in the summer more gradually becoming available as we get closer to 2025 summer window. Phil says, thank you, Tom, for applying some rationality. So good to hear reasoned arguments. You're very welcome, Phil. Thank you for listening, mate. Deepak says, okay, I'm going to try Tom's tea making method now. It's just the way forward. Yeah, teabag in, says Trevor. I agree. You got to keep it in. You don't take it out too quick. Don't pull out too soon. Good advice. Like a gang says, I think we will put in deadline bids for Sesko. It will get denied and the club will act like we tried to get someone. Honestly, it's hilarious, isn't it? The superstitions of our fan base. It's like Arsenal. What they're going to do is, right, they're going to get around a little table. They're going to dim the lights, light some candles. Right. What can we do to convince the Arsenal fans that we tried? I know. We can put a little bid in for Sesko. Not enough, because we know that, maybe like 35 and £1. Maybe that. If we put that in, shows the Arsenal fans that we have been trying to do some business at least. And then they might get off our backs, because we never wanted to actually spend. The superstitions of our fans will never cease to astonish me. It is nuts. Absolutely nuts. Proper tinfoil hat stuff. I get so many tinfoil hat comments in my comment section these days. It's hilarious. Rory says, Tom, with Heaven potentially leaving, do you think your old Hato would be a replacement? He's a player, of course, that's remained on Arsenal's agenda for a long time. Would be very expensive. Of course, Miles Lewis-Skelly playing at left. But I don't know if you heard Arteta's comments on Miles Lewis-Skelly yesterday. They were very interesting. He says, when I saw him and gave him a chance with the product that we had in the academy, the moment I saw him, the only way that I could think was to change his position. You want to have a chance here. I spoke to him and said, this is where you're going to have it, because I think it fits a lot of his quality, the way that we play, and it fits because we have necessities in the position. So he started to work on that. He put it into it straight away with the personality that he has. And the other thing is very obvious. And now he's doing it. So I know we've seen some stories suggesting that he might move into midfield, but that answer for me told me that maybe that left back position is a long-term option for Miles Lewis-Skelly. Right, let's scroll down the chat box a little bit more. Effie says, would you hijack City's move for Cambiasso? Have I gone back in time? What? Am I? Cambiasso? What? Fierce English competition for Cambiasso. Reports insist that Manchester City and Arsenal are competing to include Italian player Andrea Cambiasso. Oh, it's a different one. I was really going far back there, and I can't say I know anything about that Cambiasso. I'll tell you, I found out for the first time yesterday that Fabio Cannavaro is coming to the Emirates on Wednesday. He's the new head coach of Dinamo Zagreb. Only found that out yesterday. Didn't have a clue. Fabio Cannavaro was Dinamo Zagreb's new head coach. So that's going to be exciting to see Fabio Cannavaro in the flesh in a press conference as well. So yeah, but I can't say I know anything about Andrea Cambiasso. Is he of any relation? Andrea Cambiasso? Do we know if he is of any relation to Esteban? Shall we have a look? Andrea Cambiasso. Let's type in Esteban. No, it doesn't look like it. Doesn't look like there's any relation to the former Inter Milan and Leicester City midfielder. Doesn't look like it. Was he at Chelsea? Did Cambiasso play for Chelsea? Am I imagining that? Let me have a look. What was his career? Leicester City. No, he never played for Chelsea. Maybe it was the blue shirt in the Premier League. Yeah, he played for Leicester for a season. Inter Milan for 315 games. Played for Real Madrid, of course, as well. You may remember for a couple of seasons. They ended his career at Olympiacos. But 300 games plus for Inter. In fact, it was 431 games he played for Inter Milan. This is getting to our younger listeners probably won't remember Esteban Cambiasso, but he won La Liga with Real Madrid. He won 5 Serie A titles, absolutely incredible, and won the Champions League in 2009-10, of course, under the tutelage of the one, the only Jose Mourinho. Game Shot says, why does the media hate us? Well, I'm the media, and I don't hate us. Game Shot. It's Mehev says, Tom, is it true that we can't sign any player on loan as we have our 3 loan players? That's not the rule. The rule is you can sign 2 loan players from the Premier League, which, of course, Arsenal have 2 players on loan from the Premier League in Neto and Sterling. We can, however, sign players on loan from abroad. So we can still do some loan deals. We just can't sign loan deals from Premier League clubs. Michael says, I don't think it's far-fetched to think that sometimes our team's approach to buying these players we need is suspect. What do you think? I don't really know, Michael, what to say, because Arsenal's business over the last 5 years has built a squad that is now a Premier League title challenger. You know, we went from a team that had Mustafi and Socrates at the back to a team that is now competing for the title for the last 2 and now into this 3rd season. So, yeah, bit of a strange one. Urbalik says, not related to Esteban. One is Italian, one is Argentinian. Hey, you can have brothers that are of different, or fathers and sons that are of different nationalities. Granit Xhaka is Swiss and Toulon Xhaka is Albanian. Iñaki Williams represents Ghana. Nico Williams represents Spain. Like, you can have relations and relatives that are different nationalities. So let's just because one was Italian, one was Argentine, doesn't mean that they may not have been related. Come on. Let's get with the program. Rahul says, Tom, do you think, considering Nico Williams' prize and wage demands, should we go for a different target like a Jamie Gittins or a Barcola? Both have bigger output than Nico Williams. I mean, it's all about, availability. There's suggestions that Dortmund would want a huge figure for Gittins, so it doesn't necessarily mean that he is going to be any cheaper than Williams either. Even if he has less wages, his transfer might be significantly bigger. Barcola, of course, we don't have any concrete links to. We only saw those suggestions because Kvaratskhelia was signing for PSG, but there's no suggestions that he was ever leaving PSG, just that he was a player that could get less minutes if Kvaratskhelia did sign, which has now occurred. Local says they are both Albanian. They just choose to again, you can have different heritage. You can have different heritages. You could, you aren't, not everybody is just one nationality. Some people are multiple nationalities and therefore choose to represent. You can, your nationality might be from where you're born. It might be from where you've lived the majority of your life. It might be based upon your parents' nationality. Nationality is a very open thing. People are so precious about these things, and I don't really see the need to be. You ask Xhaka what he is, he tells you that's what he is. I really don't get why people take these things so incredibly seriously. JT says, your patience is amazing, Tom. You handle some of these questions admirably. I'll do my best, mate. Daz says, what do you think about Gyökeres? Do you think Man United will be at Arsenal to signing him? There's been no suggestions at the moment that Arsenal were going to go in for Gyökeres. I know there was a little room yesterday, but it seemed a little bit left field. I think that he will stay until the end of the season. He's certainly come out and said as much that he wants to stay up Sporting until the end of the season, and then maybe he signs to Man United and joins Ruben Amorim. Maybe he doesn't, but there's not really any clarity on that yet. Local Jun says, I agree. I'm just saying it's a bit different. It's not really that different, is it? Like, you can be multiple nationalities and choose to represent one over the other based upon lots of different factors. It's not different, really. It's just people are of different nationalities and they can still be related and have their greater association with one over the other. It's not that deep. John says, I'm English, but I could play for Ireland or the Netherlands, given my grandparents as well. Martinelli and Jorginho have Italian passports. Declan Rice has a Republic of Ireland passport as well as a British one as well. I know. And says Andrea could be Esteban's son, born and raised in Italy, and definitely would still, of course, Esteban can be. As who played the majority of his career. It could be that he had a son called Andrea. It's not this Andrea, but that could have happened. So it's mad, isn't it? Musiala, great point, played for the England youth team and now is a German international. Madueke, of course, spent a lot of time, I think, playing for the Netherlands. Playing in the Netherlands. It looked like for a time that he might represent the Netherlands national side as well. But he's chosen to represent England as well, despite obviously coming through the youth ranks after leaving Spurs at PSV Eindhoven. So, it can happen. Keke and Nico Rosberg said Odin. The Boateng brothers, another example as well. Following Balogun, of course, could have represented a number of nations, I believe, after making eventually a decision to represent the United States, but could have represented a number of different nationalities. Well, I think he has Nigerian parents, and he was born in the States, and he played at England youth level. So I do find diversity and kind of the nationality side of things very interesting. I also find it very interesting how strange people can be about the specifics of it too. I just find it so. I just don't think it needs to be as serious as what it is. Sally says, would you actually have taken our current league position at the start of the season? I think with City misfiring, we are in an amazing position right now. No juggernaut chasing us. I think, Sally, if I said to people at the start of the season, you can be 8 points ahead of Manchester City at the midpoint of January, I think the majority of Arsenal fans would have taken that, unknowing, of course, of the plight that City have undergone this season. But it kind of shows you the ridiculousness, if you like, of kind of what City have done this season. But Liverpool have outperformed everybody so far and have been very consistent up until now. Now, maybe the pressure is starting to get them. Ike Gang says, would you take Benzema at Arsenal? No, that time and that boat has sailed away, that Benzema one. OPO says, there are good players in Africa. Come and scout them. I mean, of course, there's a lot of like work permit issues when it comes to signing players from Africa. That's why what you tend to see is the likes of Red Bull Salzburg in Austria sign players from Africa. I've talked about this on the channel before. Work permit issues do make it more challenging at times to sign players directly from Africa. And so what happens is other European nations in lesser leagues, with respect, go and scout those players, sign them. Sadio Mane, Enoch Mwepu, Patson Daka, Haidara, loads of players, of course, that have been signed by Salzburg from where they've scouted from Africa and brought them in, and then they've taken that route through into the bigger sides in Europe, as Sadio Mane, of course, did with Southampton and then with Liverpool. Let's go to Carl. Says at some point tonight, the title could be back in our own hand. I don't think it can it? If Liverpool lose and we win, we'll be 1 point behind them. That they would have a game in hand, so they would still have technically the title. Oh, I guess I see what you mean, because we still have to play Liverpool. So you're actually right. If Liverpool do draw or lose tonight and Arsenal win, the title is back in Arsenal's hand. How amazing of a stat. Well spotted, Carl. That's quite the reality. I didn't actually consider that. Is that the case? Trying to work out the maths. So Arsenal would, if Liverpool lose, they would be on 47 points. If Arsenal win, they would be on 46. If Liverpool win their game in hand, they would go to 50. No, there's not. It's not in our hands, Carl. We would still be 1 point behind if we were to beat Liverpool and they were to win their game in hand. So no, sadly, it's not. I thought it was for a second. It would be 1 point. They would have 1 point on us, Carl. So we would still need a little something to go our way, including a win at Anfield, which is, of course, no easy feat. That Anfield game, by the way, is the what's the word when it's 3 before the end? What's the word? There's a word for it. After penultimate. I love language. So anti-penultimate. It's the anti-penultimate game. Arsenal's clash at Anfield. We go to Anfield, we host Newcastle, and then we go to Southampton, the last game of the season. The antepenultimate game of the season is against Liverpool away from home. Goodness me, that could be a incredible fixture with a lot on the line. So yeah, let's see. A lot of you thinking it's other things. Trinultimate, pre-penultimate, penultimate. Monumental. Oh, that's a different word. Carl, you don't need to apologise, mate. We all make mathematical errors. We've all done it. But it's still an important point. You know, if Arsenal were to win today and Liverpool were to lose, you're 1 point behind them if Arsenal were to win at Anfield with, one more game to slip up. So we're only a couple of games away from the title being back in Arsenal's hands, potentially. It's pretty incredible. So there you go. Anyway, we're going to bring the show to an end there because I need to go for a run. It's the new year, which means New Year's resolutions need to be kept, and I need to go for a run before I indulge in the Arsenal free food later at the press conference in the press lounge. So I hope you have apps. Oh, I've seen a question that I have to answer though first. Jay Collins says, "What is your Nando's order?" I can tell a lot about a person from their Nando's order. Okay, Jay Collins. I'll tell you what, I've gone through an evolution of Nando's orders. The first thing I ever got, and it was a friend of mine, a very close friend of mine, still remains a friend of mine to this day, and we would go and get Nando's, and I would always get a half chicken medium with chips and garlic bread. During my youth, when my metabolism was as high as it possibly could be. As I've got older, that order has changed. 4 chicken thighs, hot, with spicy rice and macho peas, because I love mixing the spicy rice and the macho peas together, is one order. Equally, the double chicken wrap, medium usually. I could go for hot, but I quite like the flavour of medium. With peri salt chips and coleslaw. So I've got quite a few, Jay, to be fair. I haven't so I've got a set one. If I could only have one for the rest of my life, it would probably be 4 hot chicken thighs with I think it would be macho peas, and I think it probably would be chips, actually, peri chips. But whatever happens, it has to have a chocolate cake afterwards. Because if you've not, and I know I've talked about this on the channel before, and I still get people tweeting me saying they had it. Someone tweeted me the other day, or leave a comment the other day, actually saying they had chocolate cake for the first time and they loved it. And it's the only thing I've ever recommended that I have no bad complaints about. Anyone that ever tries Nando's chocolate cake as a dessert comes to me and says, yes, you're right. It is one of, if not the best chocolate cake I have ever had. If you've not had it, and I haven't had it in a long time. I went for a Nando's with the missus the other week, and I'll be honest with you, it had been a heavy night the day before. And you know those moments where you've had a heavy night, you really feel like you want to eat, you start eating, and then you're like, oh yeah, I'm not actually that hungry, so I didn't end up having one, and I haven't had one from it. So just for the class, and it's spelt a certain way. It's called choc-a-lot cake. It's not chocolate cake. It's choc-a-lot is how it's spelt. So if it's on the menu, and it still, to my knowledge, is, go and get one. Make it a thing. If you're going to the game today, go to Nando's before. I might have Nando's for lunch. Jay, you've really inspired me now. I've got a real craving for it all of a sudden. But a chocolate cake is very special. Suga says, "Can you buy it online? If you've got one nearby, you can get it in Deliveroo or Uber Eats or whatever. You Deliveroo or something like that." But yeah, so that's your mission, people. I'm doing Nando's a huge favor here. This is not sponsored. If you have a Nando's locally to you, sometimes they're not always abroad. I think it's a relatively new thing in America. I want you to send me a picture of your Nando's order that you choose on Twitter or Blue Sky. Either or works. You can find me. I really should update my my handle on the screen with my Blue Sky social. So if you want to follow me, because I don't really use my TGT Twitter as much, I use my Blue Sky one more. So let's update that, shall we? My Blue Sky, which you can find, is this. There we go. Tweet me, post me your pictures of your pre-Arsenal match Nando's meal with a chocolate cake. All right. I want to see as many people trying this as possible. There's over 1,000 of you watching on YouTube, 1,200. I want you to go out. I want you to get it. I want you to tweet me your pictures. You can put hashtag TGT Nando's. Should we get that going? Or hashtag TGT chocolate cake or something like that? I think just TGT Nando's. That works, doesn't it? No, this isn't my attempt to try and get a black card. I would love a Nando's black card, but I don't think they even exist these days. But yeah, let's get a hashtag TGT Nando's going. Jay, you've inspired me today. I thank you for your service. And yeah, for those that don't have a Nando's nearby, they can start seeing some of the stuff I'm talking about. Yeah, TGT hashtag TGT Nando's. Let's get this going. I'd love to see your pre-match stuff. So Blue Sky, tomcanton.bluesky.social or on X at Tom Canton Media. Start tweeting me your hashtag TGT Nando's. I want to see it. I want to see it. And Jay says, do we have a chance to win a Nando's voucher? Do I do a giveaway? What if I have to send like a Nando's voucher to like Canada or something? I can't promise any giveaways, but maybe we can sort something out. Send in your best ones and I'll collate them and we'll do like a collage or something. But I want to see big commitment to this, people. TGT family, I'm calling you to arms. I'm calling you to answer. It's not UK only, Aditya. It is abroad. So you just look around, see if it's see if you have any ones nearby or locally or where the nearest one is. Maybe we could get like a challenge going of who travelled the furthest to get a Nando's. What an amazing challenge that would be, right? So you've got to say, like, if indeed you are, maybe you're coming over from the States. I want to see the Google Map travel of how, obviously, hide where you live, just roughly in that area. You don't have to tell me where your house is, just your hometown. How far you travelled to get your Nando's as well. That would be quite a funny one alongside your picture of your Nando's. So, yeah, let us know how it's going. Let us know how you get on. And I'm loving this challenge. Let us know what you do. Jay, you've inspired me. Thank you so much. What a fun end to today's show it's been. Have a fantastic Saturday. Enjoy yourselves. Probably take your mind off football. I don't know. Maybe go out, have some food, potentially some chicken. Take your mind off football for a bit. And if you're veggie, they do veggie stuff as well. So you can send that in. At least I think they do. I think they're just sides, right? You just have some sweet potato fries. But yeah, that's about it. But stay safe, stay well, stay happy and respectful, stay full of Nando's. And as always, up the Arsenal.